Hey everyone, welcome to the RotoGrinders Morning Grind podcast. I'm your host, Stevietpfl. It is Wednesday, October 30th, 2024. We have a 8-game NBA, I almost said MLB, NBA slate to talk about here on today's podcast. Joined today by my buddy, Kyle Murray, not Kyler Murray, K Murray. What's happening, my friend?
Yeah, middle of the NBA season now. Feels like we're in mid-swing. We had some nice news breaking. And even on a 4-game slate, we had tons of news. Already have some injuries for tomorrow. So NBA is already NBAing. So looking forward to talking some hoops.
Yeah, I mean, I like talking hoops with you. You're one that I know I can always count on to come on and have some great takes when it comes to NBA, and you're part of the projections team here at RG. So you get to do a lot of the numbers and who's in, who's out kind of stuff, which is always great to kind of hear insights on. So yeah, I mean, very interesting slate. I mean, I think the biggest thing that we'll be kind of paying attention to is if Ja plays or not. With him being questionable. Barnes already ruled out. I think that's one of the ones that, you're kind of alluding to there. So we'll talk about all of this. What's up, chat? Hope you're all having a great Tuesday night. It's been a long day for me and Kyle and a lot of people here at the company. It's been a long day. We're ready to jump back into the sports world here. I did have tacos. It was Taco Tuesday. Got some tacos. So let's talk some basketball. We got Toronto at Charlotte is where we get started. 226.5 total. Charlotte a 6-point favorite, and right off the bat, we get to talk about the big news on the slate. Scotty Barnes out, Brown out, Olynyk out, and quickly doubtful. Miller and Williams still out for Charlotte, and Toronto right off the bat. Here we go. Let's talk about the situation. No Scotty Barnes. I mean, how do we not play Jakob Poeltl is my initial thought. Getting Charlotte coming off of a game where he played 40 minutes. Like, we love big men against Charlotte. It's been a thing for years. It hasn't changed this year. Like, right out of the gate, Jakob Poeltl, one of my favorite plays here on the slate.
Yeah, 100%. We see, quickly with the Q on DraftKings, but he's doubtful, so he's also going to be out. RJ Barrett is set to return for this one, so he's probably going to be the big usage guy that slides in. So he's also pretty interesting here for me. 6,600, I believe, on DraftKings. Yeah, 6.6. So him and Pirtle, I think, are the two intriguing guys. Obviously, Barrett played yesterday. He returned. Only played 29 minutes. I do think we could see him play a little bit more just out of potential necessity here. Pretty thin team. So Pirtle and Barrett, they stick out pretty much off the bat to me. I do assume that we'll see, a guy like Grady Dick stay in the starting lineup. He played 37 minutes in that overtime game, so 32 minutes regulation there. So he's another guy I think could be a value option. He's not necessarily cheap anymore. 5,200. I would prefer Barrett and Pirtle over Dick at that price, but all three of those guys still in play. And then I do think that obviously the matchup here is pretty solid against Charlotte. So definitely gonna be a good spot for all these guys.
Yeah. Listen, like you mentioned, quickly doubtful, Barnes out, Olynyk out still, Brown out. Like, there's plenty of minutes to go around. It'd be really interesting to see how everything kind of projects. But I mean, Grady Dick, 5,200 seems like he's going to be a really solid value play. Just kind of seeing Ochi as someone I definitely think at 4,600 is going to be a fantastic value play today. He was already playing really solid minutes coming off of 2 really strong games in a row. So, yeah, I mean, these guys are great. It really comes down to, like, how many Toronto players do you want to play? I mean, I think I'm very comfortable with 2, potentially 3. I mean, it's a great matchup against Charlotte. So I'm not afraid to play Toronto in this spot. It's not like Charlotte's this great team that's going to go out there and beat them by 20. The Charlotte side, though, I mean, LaMelo looks fantastic. I mean, with him being healthy, he looks like one of the best players in the NBA. Absolutely love it. Outside of him, though, I mean, it's really hard to get excited about playing anyone else here. I mean, Trey Mann now up to 5K. That makes the decision a little bit tougher. Nick Richards, 4,800. He's coming off of 2 really solid games. We could potentially see him play well. Definitely want to focus around LaMelo. What are your thoughts here on the Charlotte side?
Yeah, like you said, LaMelo has been incredible this year, and the rates kind of back it up. 36% usage rate, 37% assist rate, and 11% rebound rate as well. So, I mean, he looks like an absolute just fantasy and DFS stud. 1.6 DK points per minute currently this season. Obviously, you're thinking that's probably going to regress a little bit, especially on the point per minute there. But I mean, with him playing as strong as he has, and especially on DraftKings, where I mean, he's kind of built for that scoring, right? You get the increased points for threes, you get the double double and triple double bonuses. So yeah, I think LaMelo Ball looks awesome here. Charlotte's also playing really fast this year. I think they're top 5 or 6 in terms. Yeah, they're 5th in terms of pace right now. So they're typically going to be a good matchup, and also be a team that you like targeting here. So LaMelo definitely stands out. Trey Mann has also been very good this season, 27% usage rate on the year. So him being able to do that while also having LaMelo Ball on the floor, having a 36% usage rate is pretty impressive. It does hurt guys like Miles Bridges, but with Brandon Miller still out, we can kind of expect at least the from Ball, and then maybe even slightly with Man there to continue. So I like both of those guys, even though, like you mentioned, the price tag on Man is coming up. I still do think he's strong. Strong option there. If you wanted to kind of buy low or maybe hope for a bounce back on a guy like Miles Bridges at 7,200, I do think he'd be awfully contrarian here, and probably be one of the guys that has a pretty decent matchup from a positional standpoint, just based on with Toronto focusing a little bit more on the Melo Ball. I think it makes sense to look at Miles Bridges as a tournament play, but again, I do think that obviously LaMelo would be my favorite spend up option from Charlotte, and then I do think I still prefer Man at cost compared to Miles Bridges.
I will say they seem very committed early in the season. It's only been 3 games, but they seem very committed to letting Seth Curry play 25 plus minutes. He's 3,900. He's going to get his shots up. He's going to shoot anytime that he's open. So at 3,900, I don't hate that, especially in this matchup against Toronto, where you're playing a lot of the Toronto value on the other side of this game. So if you wanted to go like LaMelo, Curry, 2 or 3 value Toronto players and just play like a 5-game stack here, I don't think it's the craziest idea for tournaments. Like Kyle was saying, like this team's playing so fast, and it's not like they're playing great defense. So that's one thing that you could definitely take advantage of. Through the first 3 games this season, Charlotte's in the bottom 10 in defensive rating. So I like the potential game stack here. And it's not like Toronto is a great defensive team. They're bottom 10 too. And it's going to be worse with Scotty Barnes being out. So definitely a game I want to target. I think that there's going to be a lot of scoring in this game. We move on. We got Atlanta at Washington, 234.5 total in this game. Big total. We just watched this game go for 240, 2 nights ago, Monday night. Atlanta 3.5 point favorite. Bogdanovich out. Dyson Daniels out. We'll talk about that in a second. DeAndre Hunter questionable. And then on the Washington side, Kuzma out, Brogdon out, Bay out. So a lot to kind of go through here in this game. I mean, the 7 o'clock games are very juicy with injuries. I'll be honest, Kyle. I mean, I could build my whole DraftKings lineup based off of this Toronto, Charlotte, and Atlanta, Washington game and call it a night. And I mean, it might end up that way. I mean, I love this game too. Let's start with the Atlanta side. First things first, Dyson Daniels. This guy's played at least 34 minutes in 3 of 4 games this season. The one game he didn't, he got in a little bit of foul trouble. That's a lot of minutes to kind of fill in for here. DeAndre Hunter still dealing with this knee. Missed 2 games after having a solid game. Like, what are we doing with Atlanta in this spot?
Yeah, I do think obviously the Hunter news is going to be probably the biggest news from a questionable tag standpoint coming into it. Obviously, Daniels played 36 minutes last game. Him being out is going to leave a big hole in the rotation, but also Vic Krejci as well, who's out. He played, I think, almost 10 first half minutes last game before getting injured. So on pace to play, anywhere from 18 to 20 minutes. That's another pretty key piece out of the rotation there. We saw Richer get the start last game. Didn't really play all that great, and he didn't end up getting like true starter minutes, but he's a young guy, obviously number 1 overall pick that they seem to be kind of slowly developing, not really giving him a ton of run. But quite frankly, this might be a spot where they just don't really have much of a choice but to let him go out there and run him 32 plus minutes here. So if he does that, we haven't really seen a ton of strong permanent performances from him yet. He did get off to kind of a hot start in the first quarter and then just pretty much did nothing the rest of the game. But he's a guy I'd be fine buying low on here. And if Hunter is out, and even if Hunter is not out, I still think he could be a pretty good contrarian play. Obviously, Washington is a team that we like to target, and like you mentioned, we saw this game kind of pop off last time out. Washington, their pace has been down a little bit more than I would have expected coming into the year, but that can also always regress back to kind of where we're sort of expecting. Obviously, I think Trae Young and Jalen Johnson are strong plays. I mean, these guys both might be just forced to play 35, 36 plus minutes on any given night. But on a game like this, where your rotation is so banged up, we might see them flirt with 38 plus minutes here. So I think both those guys, strong options. Obviously, we get Okongwu back. He missed last game, but that was just due to normal rest. So he could also be in a spot where maybe people overlook him there. 5,500, I do like him at that price tag, but Risha stands out from a value standpoint. And then Garrison Matthews also might get into the rotation a little bit more, as well as David Roddy. Both of these guys, especially if Hunter is also out with all these guys, both those guys could easily be sub 4K options that could be pivots off of Risha if he's popular, or just be, a strong plays known, right? Matthews played 24 minutes last game. Roddy played about 20, but I do think he could be in line for more if both, I guess DeAndre Hunter joins the rest of these guys out for this one. So I think all three of those guys, Risha, Roddy, and Matthews could all potentially be value options to go along with the top end plays here.
Yeah, and I mean, don't forget about like Jalen Johnson and Trae Young. I mean, Trae Young in this matchup on Monday shot 13% from the field and scored 47 fantasy points. Like, if you get his 40 to 50%, you're looking at 60, 70 fantasy points from him. So Trae Young definitely up towards the top of the list of like guys that pay up for on the slate. Jalen Johnson, another stellar play. I think both of those guys, like the one guy that I really just don't have any interest from in Atlanta is Capella. I mean, they're very careful with his minutes. He's still kind of expensive where like his price went up. It went down there for a little bit, but it went back up. So yeah, I mean, I just don't have any interest in him. Probably not going to play a ton of Okongwu in this spot. I'll probably regret it. But yeah, I mean, Atlanta, a great source of value. With Okongwu being back, I don't expect Larry Nance to play 23 minutes again. I think that was basically Okongwu was out and Nance got a little bit of run. Risha, Matthews, these are the guys to look at with Trae Young and Jalen Johnson. Washington side, Kyle Kuzma. I mean, again, like Kyle Kuzma is coming off a game against Atlanta where he played 40 minutes, put up 50 fantasy points, and now he's dealing with a groin. So, yeah, I mean, what are your thoughts here when it comes to the Washington side?
Yeah, Kuzma, 28% usage rate this season, so that's going to be vacated, obviously, and that sounds like a pool party for Mr. Jordan Poole. He's never seen a shot that he doesn't like. I'm assuming he will have 20 plus attempt upside here in this one, and that might even be selling him a little bit short here. He took 17 in that last game against Atlanta. He actually has 17 shot attempts in 2 of the 3 games so far this season, and his assist rates also looked pretty good, especially his potential assists. So I do think he also brings some peripheral upside as well. Obviously, we know he can score 26 points in 2 of the 3 games so far this year, including that game against Boston, which is a pretty tough matchup. So it's an impressive game there. So Poole, I like quite a bit here at 7,500. We did see a little bit of a tweaking with the starting rotation last time out for Washington. So keep an eye on that to see if Valanciunas remains in the starting lineup. I don't think it's a huge deal because he's not a guy that's going to start and play 30 plus minutes anyway. He started last game and played 22 minutes. So I think that's probably more of the norm there for him, but he does affect some of these other guys in the rotation. I think it would hurt, Alex Sarr's minutes because they're playing together more often, instead of having Sarr play just the natural 5, which I do think is better for him on a permanent basis. But mainly Poole is the top guy for me here. Koulibaly is also an interesting option at 5,200. I think that price is awfully cheap for a guy who's just looked like he's sort of taking a small step forward here this season. He's played 35 plus minutes in back-to-back games, 17 plus points in those games. So Koulibaly and Poole are the 2 guys that I expect to benefit from a scoring standpoint the most with Kuzma out. I do like Sarr here still at this price. He's been a more impressive kind of point per minute producer so far compared to the other rookie in this game, Risha. So Sarr is another contrarian option that I do think should be fairly low owned that I think does pop a little bit here. But mainly my interest is going to be in Koulibaly and Poole.
Do you think Corey Kispert starts in this spot?
He could.
For Kuzma?
Yeah.
Because I like him. I like him more off the bench, if that makes any sense. I mean, I think he still plays 30 plus minutes. He finally had a really good game the other night. It's 21 actual points. I think like Corey Kispert, like if he starts or if like regardless, I think he's in play at 4,900 because I mean this guy is a guy that can go out and shoot the basketball really well and have a really strong game from the field. I like the Alex Sarr call. I think that him and Valanciunas definitely see an uptick in rebounds here. And like Jordan Poole could see an uptick maybe in like assists, even though it is Jordan Poole. So don't get your hopes too excited about that kind of stuff. But yeah, just a great spot. Like, we could sit here and break it all down over and over and over again, and we're just going to come back to these two games being two bangers right off the bat. We have some other good games too, don't get me wrong, but man, these two games right here to start the slate, just fantastic. So, it's not one of those slates where you're like, man, I really want to have an 8:30 player in my lineup, because I mean, these two 7:00 games could each go over like 240, 250 points. And you're like, man, I knew I should have done it, kind of thing. So we got Lakers at Cleveland next. 226 total in this game. Cleveland a 5-point favorite. D'Angelo Russell, questionable. Luckily, this is a 7:00 game. We should get this news before lock. Vanderbilt out, Wood out, and then on the Cleveland side, Porter Jr. out and Strus out. Let's start with the Lakers. I mean, I've said it multiple times already on the podcast this year, but I love what JJ Redick is doing with Anthony Davis. They're running the offense through him. It's very similar to how Denver runs the offense through Jokic, and I think the sky is the limit for Anthony Davis in any matchup this year. I don't love this matchup for the Lakers as a whole. I think Hachimura is still probably too cheap at 5,400 for what his role has been with JJ Redick at coach. Hey, JJ's embracing the players on this team that have talent. Shocking, how that kind of works out for them. But I mean, it'd be interesting to see if Russell sits, like how we kind of react to Russell being out. But as of right now, night before, not a ton of interest in the Lakers outside of like Rui. And like, I think Anthony Davis, if you're playing 150, any slate he's on, he should be in your builds. Doesn't matter the matchup.
Yeah, yep, 100% agree there. AD has been awesome. 31% usage rate on the year. You mentioned Rui. The most impressive thing, or I guess the biggest improvement this year, he's been playing really well, but the minutes have been incredible, right? 35 plus minutes in 3 of the 4 games so far this season. And the one game where he didn't play 35 minutes was his most efficient game, where he had 20 points, 10 rebounds last time out against the Suns. So yeah, Hachimura definitely is a strong play here at 5,400. And yeah, JJ Redick is definitely allowing his top guys to, see the floor more. LeBron's got up to a slow start. It sounded like he was dealing with like a sinus thing, so I probably wouldn't worry about that too much. 3 for 14 from the field last game. But so he'll probably be a pretty contrarian option. You do have the narrative, him going back to Cleveland, if people are interested in that. And we did sort of get a little hint that maybe Bronny James might be in the rotation. Again, it'll probably just be 1-2 minute thing like it was in that opening game. And I think that they kept him with the team for this road trip because of this game. I think LeBron wants to play in Cleveland with his son, which is obviously a very cool story, but not really relevant for DFS. But I do think LeBron, nonetheless, is a pretty interesting tournament option, especially I do think a lot of people will be focusing on AD if they're targeting this matchup. But AD does have a tough matchup defensively with Jared Allen and Evan Mobley, both really strong defenders. Obviously, having a lot of focus on AD and LeBron kind of will be able to attack some of these wings here. So I do think LeBron's a really strong tournament play. I like him quite a bit. And then Rui, and then obviously Anthony Davis is going to be a strong play probably every slate this season if he continues this kind of usage.
Going to the Cleveland side here, I mean, Cleveland's just a really good basketball team. They're not like DFS gold on most slates. They're not a team that like I typically get a lot of exposure to. It is the Lakers. I mean, this game should be a really good basketball game. Is there anything here on the Cleveland side that you like?
Not anybody standing out too much. I guess one thing I forgot to allude to on the Lakers side is something that I've been sort of trying to target early on this season is Cleveland just playing faster. Last year, they were one of the slower teams in basketball. Obviously, they have a new head coach, Kenny Atkinson, at the helm now. Now they're just right above league average, which is not only good to see for them. I think it helps them as a team, but also just for DFS purposes where they're not playing incredibly slow. And obviously, they're always going to have a good defensive team, but I think all these guys do kind of have a little bit more value, and then as well as just a little bit easier of a matchup there. So for some of those Lakers guys, I do think that benefits them. But in terms of top plays, I'm not really keying in on a ton of these options here. Obviously, you can always make a case for a guy like Donovan Mitchell, who's going to have obviously a ton of usage, 32% usage rate on the season. But for the most part, I'm mostly interested in the Lakers side. I guess my favorite Cavalier play would probably be Evan Mobley here.
Basically any slate, right? Like Evan Mobley's that guy that you just kind of end up with exposure to. He has that 50+ point upside. I mean, Allen when Mobley's out or Mobley when Allen's out is always a really good option. Garland, he had a outstanding game against the Knicks the other night. It was good to see him get going. He took 19 shots. It's like, hey, when shooters get hot, they're going to keep shooting. That's kind of what happened in that one. So, yeah, I mean, I just don't love it, right? Like we have so much value where I don't feel like you're going to some of the value here. Ty Jerome had been playing some minutes and like doing stuff, but I just think there's so much value in those first two games that, if you're going to play people here, it's probably Mobley, Mitchell, or Garland. Boston at Indiana, taking on the Pacers, 233 total. Boston, a 6.5 point favorite. Porzingis out. Turner, questionable. Wiseman still out. Start with the Boston side here. What do you like here for the Celtics?
Yeah, I think one thing that's pretty interesting is how much slower the Pacers have been playing this year. Obviously, that does kind of hurt the overall matchup that they're still top 10 in terms of teams to attack based on defensive efficiency, but I do think the pace switch up is a little bit worth noting and obviously a little interesting here. In terms of the guys that I'm keying on, it's really tough for a lot of these teams that are essentially at full strength, and especially teams like Cleveland and like Boston who have kind of a few different studs that you can sort of see production getting dispersed outwards, just because there's going to be a lot of teams that are thin, but there's also a lot of value in the slate. So you can always make a case for a guy like Jason Tatum. He's obviously had a couple of big games so far this season. So I think he'd probably be the guy I'm most willing to click on here, but there are definitely spend ups on the slate that I like a little bit more. But Jaylen Brown, sneaky, having a pretty big usage season and 1.3 DK points per minute. So I do think Jaylen Brown also a really strong tournament play. 33% usage on the year. Derek White's also been good on a permanent basis, but I do think he's a guy that kind of puts up stats across the board rather than sort of having a big usage rate. So I do think the price is fine on him, but Jaylen Brown at the end of the day is probably my favorite Celtic tonight.
Yeah, really like what Tatum's been doing too. He's been playing really good basketball. We know Jason Tatum's just capable of playing really good basketball in general. I mean, it's one of those two guys. I think if you're targeting anyone from Boston, it's one of those two guys. I don't know if I'd play them together. I think for one of them to have a ceiling game, it's probably the other guy not having an upside game. So could they both put up like 50? Sure, but that's not kind of what you're shooting for on an 8-game slate like this. So I mean, it's one or the other. Derek White, 6,900 price tag. I really wanted to come back down to like 6K before I start playing him again. He's been playing great, at least 11 shot attempts in all 4 games, and the assist numbers have been great. So it's really hard to get exposure to him at this price point. On the Pacers side, Turner matters for sure for me, because it could potentially open up, some extra minutes for guys like Toppin and Jackson. What are you looking at here on the Pacers side?
Yeah, if Turner's out, I do think we probably see Isaiah Jackson start at center, and I think he'd be a really strong play, especially obviously with James Wiseman. I think it was a torn Achilles, so he's done for the year. I think Jackson would essentially play as many minutes as they are comfortable with playing him. I would guess it's probably not like 35 minutes or anything like that, but I would guess 26 to 28 minutes is probably a pretty good range for a guy like Jackson. And obviously, we know that he's a pretty good permanent producer, so he could be one of the better plays from a value perspective on the slate if we do get news that Turner's out. And you mentioned Toppin. I would also like that play quite a bit. They'd probably need him to maybe even play some minutes at the 5, which I do think is definitely possible against a Boston team that can easily be matched up that way with Al Horford getting time at the 5. And then even a guy like Jarace Walker, who's more of a 3-4 combo guy, but they've kind of been reluctant to play him in any sort of bigger capacity in terms of like moving him down to the 4 or even at the 5 at all. But this could be a spot where if Turner's out, and obviously we already have Wiseman out, we could see him pushed for more minutes. I don't think it'd be anything crazy. I would just kind of monitor the projections there. But if he's a guy who can get 18 to 20 minute projection, I don't think you'll need that kind of play on this slate because we have a lot of really good value. But he could be a contrarian guy maybe in a large field lineup. But I do think Toppin and Isaiah Jackson would both be really, really strong plays if Turner's out. And it's it's obviously a difficult matchup here against Boston. Good defensively, they play pretty slow, and they've just been blowing everybody out. Boston, they just look like they almost look like they just want the title again already, just like right off the bat, and they look deserving of it so far. But in terms of the top end guys, I'm not really interested in Halliburton. I know he had a better game last time out, but still he's looked rough, and I do think that the Pacers kind of dropping their pace isn't impacting him in a really negative way so far. I think that's pretty kind of telling when you look at the box scores for him. I think he'll be fine, but I don't know if this is the spot where I'm looking to catch him on a bounce back. So for me, most likely just going to stick with Toppin and Jackson if Turner's out. And even if he still plays, I do think Toppin and maybe even Isaiah Jackson are viable value plays, just to go on maybe the premise that if this game blows out or Turner's limited based on injury. And I think Jackson, obviously, plenty efficient enough on a permanent basis to get there.
Yeah, I mean, the matchup stinks, right? Like at the end of the day, the matchup stinks. But if Turner sits, how do we not play Jackson? I mean, 3,800, like you said, probably going to play 25 plus minutes here, if not more. So he would just be one of those guys where I don't necessarily care about the matchup and just you kind of plug and play. Every opportunity is different, but at this price point, you're definitely interested in him. So Detroit at Philly, 217 total. Philadelphia 5-point favorite. Thompson continues to be out for Detroit, and Embiid and Paul George continue to be out for Philly. I mean, a really low total in this game, and I think a lot of that potentially has to do with like Detroit playing pretty slow to start the season, Philadelphia not really trying to push the pace either. Is there anything standing out to you here for the Pistons?
I do think Cade's a pretty interesting play. I do think a big part of the Pistons going out and getting JB Bickerstaff was to, and obviously they made an abrupt decision on Monty Williams. And I think a big part of that was they didn't have any time to waste with the development of these guards, both Cunningham and Jaden Ivey, and that's kind of shown pretty quickly with Cade Cunningham. He's taken 18 plus shots in every game, 22 plus shots in 3 of those 4 games. And honestly, this Detroit team, they've played 4 pretty good teams, 4 teams that were in the playoffs either last year or 2 years ago, all pretty close. Boston, Cleveland, and Indy were 3 of the better teams in the Eastern Conference last year. All have essentially the same rosters from last year. And, the Pistons played all these teams pretty close. This is by far their easiest matchup so far this season. I know Philly is going to be a pretty good team at the end of the day as well. But bottom line, obviously, Embiid, Paul George, both out. And they are a team that does look somewhat attackable here from a fantasy perspective as well. So I do think it's a pretty interesting tournament spot. So I like Cade Cunningham quite a bit in this game. I also like Jaden Ivey at 6,300 here. Jalen Duren, we haven't really seen that big game yet from him. He's just been really consistent. But again, this is their best matchup so far. He will have to deal with Andre Drummond, which could put him potentially in some foul trouble. But we know that he's a threat for a double-double every single night. And not even really a threat. He's more of like it's probably unlucky if he doesn't get a double-double at this point. But Cunningham and Ivy, I like quite a bit. I did see a comment about Tobias Harris revenge game in the chat. Tobias, he can't even have revenge games anymore because it seems like he's been on, on half the league. And also, I just don't think he's interested in playing basketball anymore. I think he's just collecting a paycheck. That game, not against Miami, but against Boston, where he was just throwing up bricks, is just brutal. Obviously, they have 3 guys who are playing essentially the same role with Beasley, Hardaway, and Harris looks like the worst out of all 3 of those so far this season. So it's mainly my interest is in Cade Cunningham, who I like quite a bit tonight, and then Jaden Ivey.
Gotta love the Tobias Harris revenge in chat. Chat, we love you. Yeah, I mean, gotta love that kind of stuff. You can't get that anywhere else, right? Listen, I've been fading Cade all year, and he's been making me look silly by fading him. Why not one more time? I mean, I feel like he's the best play from Detroit, but just don't know, man. It's really hard for me to play Cade over some of the other guys in this range. I want to, like I said, play Trae Young, I think, on this slate at the top, and I don't know if I'm going to be able to do both. I do think, like, we have this question on expert survey, right, that we fill out, and it's like, how are you going to be different on the slate? This is definitely a stars and scrubs slate. Like, there is no doubt that I'm going to be looking at a stars and scrubs type of build today, like 2 or 3 stars and taking all the value from those first 2 games that we talked about. So it's just really like, do I end up with like LaMelo, Trey, and where does that leave me with Cade? And like I play one lineup, and I've been very clear about that for years for NBA. I don't have time to play more than one. And like even on the other side of this game, Tyrese Maxey has been fantastic. I mean, this dude has taken 30 shots in 2 of his 3 games. So let's go to the other side of this game. Like Maxey has an incredible ceiling, and he's like $500 more than Cade in the same game. Like this guy is he's shooting a ton, and it's not going to stop. Like there's no reason for it to stop until Embiid and Paul George get back. So like, how do I play Cade over these guys? Is kind of where I'm at. If you're playing 150, even if you're playing like a 20 entry max type of build, I think that's when you definitely get some exposure to Cade. But like in single entry, 3 entry, I just don't know if I get to him. And I get the reasoning why. Like this guy's a really good basketball player. I have no bad thing to say about Cade as far as like his basketball talents. It's just more of like, how do I play him over LaMelo and Maxey and Trey, kind of thing. So let's talk about the Philadelphia side here. I mean, we're loving what we're seeing out of Maxey, right? Like 48 minutes against the Pacers the other night, 32 shot attempts, like 60 fantasy points, 45 actual points. Like this dude is a guy you're definitely looking at on any slate.
Yeah, obviously he's coming off of the big game. I think the main difference between Maxey and Cunningham is Maxey has obviously that ability to go out and score 50 points, just like actual points, and no one would really be all that surprised. But when you look at the numbers comparing the two, like Cade Cunningham, he's just I think the more complete player. And the thing about Cade is I think he's had some really strong games so far this season. But again, this is just his best matchup so far. Philly's actually top 5 in pace right now, and that's not really a surprise with Maxey just getting the ball and running down the floor. It seems like every single possession. But Maxey, obviously, he has that built-in upside. But Cade Cunningham has almost actually has over double the assist rate that Maxey has right now, and a better rebound rate as well. So I think he's just a little bit safer from a complete standpoint. And we just haven't really seen the ceiling yet from Cade Cunningham. So I'm just kind of hoping to bet on that in this game. But obviously, no complaints about anyone who wants to play Maxey. I think he's a very strong play here as well. If you're picking somebody to put up 40 points, it's not a bad bet here. For Maxey. Obviously, Pistons are playing slow. No surprise. Obviously, I mentioned Bickerstaff. He came over from Cleveland, so Cleveland's playing faster now, but Detroit's playing slower with the coaching change there. But they've still been bad defensively. I think they're still bottom 10 in defensive efficiency. Bottom 5, sorry. So still a really good matchup here for Maxey, so no complaints on anyone who wants to play him there. We finally saw Drummond get a minutes ceiling game. Last time out, he played 37 minutes. Obviously, that's an overtime game, so 32 regulation minutes would still be a ceiling game so far. But he also had his worst point per minute performance of the season so far. So I do think Drummond is a pretty strong option here as well as a bounce back. 7K is kind of a tough price to pay. I don't think I'll be getting to him a ton, but I do think he'll be pretty contrarian here. Caleb Martin, 5,100. He's been starting and playing a ton of minutes here as well. I think he's a strong option. He played 37 minutes last game, so just like Drummond, 32 regulation minutes in that one. That's a really good price tag on him, 5,100 for a guy who's definitely going to be on the floor quite a bit, and he's also put up some pretty good peripheral stats. Probably not going to count on him scoring 20 plus real points all that often. He did have 17 last game, but obviously the rebounding production has been pretty impressive. Yeah. 9+ rebounds in 2 of those 3 games. So Caleb Martin and Maxey are probably my 2 favorite plays. And then I guess like a somewhat of a sneakier play could be Kelly Oubre here. I don't know how contrarian he'll actually be when we get updated projected ownership numbers, but he hasn't really had a big game yet. And the one big game real life that he did have was 28 points in the second game of the year, and he only had 37 DK points. But he has a 28% usage rate on the year. So he's a guy, again, you do sort of need that ceiling scoring game, and then hopefully you can get some rebounds from him to have that really strong DraftKings performance. But if you're not going to play Maxey, I do think it makes sense to have some interest in Oubre, because if Maxey's not scoring, Oubre's probably going to have a pretty solid game.
Yeah, easy in chat talking about Caleb Martin as well. I have Caleb Martin written down for one of the morning grind questions. I like the spot a lot for him today. He's like that. You get that like poor man's double double. You can get like 10 rebounds, 15 points, fill in with a step like a steal or two, 3 or 4 assists, and like just adds up quickly. It's like going to the grocery store. It just adds up quickly. So, Caleb Martin very much in play for me. I'm with you. Maxey and Caleb Martin, my favorite 2 plays. If you're not getting a lot of Maxey, you like the Oubre call. He's been shooting a lot too. I mean, that's kind of the stuff we're looking for. We're looking for usage. We're looking for shooting. We're looking at assist opportunities and stuff. So rebounding opportunities. We're looking for all that stuff when we're playing DFS NBA. And, you're definitely getting some of that here on the Philadelphia side. We got Knicks at Heat. Yeah, listen, Derek, grocery shopping is rough these days. My monthly Costco trip was today. Whew, not fun. The Knicks, Heat, 214.5 total. Knicks a 2-point favorite. Precious remains out. Mitch Rob out. Hart questionable. Love out for Miami. Basically good to go for Miami on the Miami side. Hart, he's been kind of dealing with this like leg injury, but I mean, he came out and played 38 minutes with this leg injury the other night, had his best game of the season. We were kind of like a little worried after the Boston game and, Josh Hart's minutes, but I think that you're not too concerned about that. I'll be honest, the Knicks look awful to start the year. I mean, it doesn't really shock me. Karl-Anthony Towns, I think we all kind of agreed that like this pickup made no sense for the Knicks. What do you like here for New York?
Yeah, I think the Knicks are a pretty good example of some small sample stuff for just NBA DFS in general. I mean, they've played 3 games so far. They're actually dead last in pace, so they're playing at an extremely slow pace. But they're also the worst defensive team in basketball so far. But you have to kind of look at it, right? They played Boston, and Boston did not miss a shot against them. Gave 132 points, then gave up 123 against the Pacers, and then they played Cleveland. So they played 3 really tough teams. So again, I don't think they're going to be this bad defensively all year. I don't think that they're going to be a team that's also as bad as they've been offensively. But you have to assume that these guys are probably feeling the effects of playing 40 minutes a game last year. Pretty much for the entirety of the season. Like you mentioned, the Towns addition was definitely a surprise. And then also Mikal Bridges. I do think for me, I'm probably not overly interested in anybody from the Knicks here in this one, which, maybe Josh Hart if we, feel comfortable he's going to play 38 minutes again. But again, I just think this is probably the least enticing game. Both teams bottom 3 in terms of pace on the year. So, so far, I guess we'll see if the Hart news plays out in a weird way, but also one of the healthier teams from, a projection standpoint.
Miami, anything here on the Miami side?
I always like Bam Adebayo in terms of games where he's going to get overlooked. I just think I do think he's going to have a big year. But I just don't know if this is the spot that I want to target. Like I mentioned, both teams bottom 3 in terms of pace. The Knicks have been bad defensively, but again, I think that improves. So I'm probably just going to stay away from this game.
I don't love this game either. We kind of saw like Jovic playing really solid, and then like the other night, Jaquez kind of stepped into the role. I just now potentially like Josh Richardson getting in the mix too. He's off the injury report heading into this game. I think there's just too many mouths to feed in Miami. There'll be plenty of times this year we'll have like 4 or 5 people out for Miami at a time, and we'll be able to play the Heat. I just think this game overall, and not even that it has the lowest total on the slate, I just think it's like the worst DFS game on the slate too. So there'll be somebody that goes for 70 and we'll all regret it or something. But on paper, looking at it the night before, this is probably my least favorite game on the slate. Orlando at Chicago, 226.5 total. Orlando, 4.5-point favorite. Goga is questionable. Isaac's still questionable. Ball questionable for Chicago, and Jalen Smith questionable. So a lot of question marks on an 8:00 game. Luckily, like this game, it doesn't have a lot to love. I mean, Paulo coming off of an insane game the other night, 1 assist away from a triple-double, 86 fantasy points for my boy Paulo. Love what the Magic look like right now, man. I think that my Magic have finally taken the next step. Still feel like we could, potentially benefit from like a superstar coming into Orlando, but I love what we have. I mean, we have a young team that's very talented, playing great defense. Wendell Carter Jr., I think at 5,600 is a really solid, pivot tournament play. His minutes have been great. we're going to see a lot of chalky type plays on this slate, especially in this price range. So I don't mind him. But I mean, I think Paulo definitely benefited the other night from Franz only playing 11 minutes. It was an illness for Franz. He's not even on the injury report. He should be good to go. I think this is a spot we potentially jump off Paulo, but I mean, he's definitely one of the stars you could pay up for, and I wouldn't argue it either.
Yeah, hard to argue that. That was some performance. I know everyone's favorite Twitter handicapper was on the under for Paulo at 38.5 PRA, and he went
That was
over
a
that
mistake.
by halftime, and then he finished with 50.
How do
points.
you go under on anything with Paulo when the news came out that Franz was dealing with an illness? Like, that was an instant mistake.
Yeah, but it gave me a good chuckle at least. But to your point, Paulo has been incredible. I know in our RG fantasy season long NBA teams, I wanted Paulo in the draft, and I just couldn't get him. He's a guy who I was kind of counting on taking a big step forward, and obviously that's been the case so far. I think the big thing is his 3-point attempts, right? He's had 4+ 3-point attempts in all but one game so far, and 8+ in 2 games. So I think that will be kind of a big indicator on his trajectory. If he can continue to improve that and continue to have that volume, that's going to be a big plus for him. The matchup here against Chicago is actually one that I think is fine. Chicago plays right now at the 9th fastest pace in the NBA. So I think that's going to continue as well for Chicago. So Paulo, I like the Wendell Carter call. For me, coming into the year, it was difficult to really gauge Carter's minutes, but he's been very consistent. And if Goga and Isaac remain out, even if they don't, I'm not too worried about it. But it's just kind of that added layer of stability in terms of the minutes projection for Carter to play 30+ minutes again. 5,600, I think, is a good price tag. Anthony Black is also a guy who's been playing some pretty solid minutes. He hasn't really done a whole lot with them yet. He's just been kind of having consistent DFS games, but he could also be a guy that kind of goes under the radar and is a kind of a sneaky large field. I'm talking like the largest field contest that anyone's playing, but he is a guy that I have my eye on as a potential solid value play going forward. I think at least worth noting. But other than that, I'm not overly sold on on the rest of this Magic team.
Yeah, I mean, Suggs' usage is great. He's been playing really solid minutes, over 25% usage in back-to-back games. We saw him shoot the ball really well. I mean, double-digit. He's taken 26 3-point attempts over the last 2 games. A little bit of that against Indiana with Franz out, I think. But, I mean, against Memphis, taking that type of threes, like, when you have guys like Franz and Paulo on your team that are creating opportunities for themselves, you're going to get open threes. And I mean, Suggs has upside on any slate in that type of scenario. I watch a lot of Magic basketball. I'm a Magic fan. This seems really fun. I like the Black call. He's getting really solid usage. Could be that like low owned tournament play that nobody plays that could put up like 25 to 28. And if one of those other like cheaper value just kind of busts, we're seeing a lot of that with the Golden State value right now. It's possible on any given slate, right? So Chicago side, I mean, Zach LaVine has been like an auto bet for me to start the season. I mean, his point prop is something that I've been betting a lot. I think I'm out on this one. The Magic play really good defense, if very underrated. I guess they're not even technically underrated anymore as far as defense. Like, Orlando's going to try to slow this game down. Chicago plays at the fastest pace in the NBA, or Orlando. I think they're like 17th or 18th, but I think we'll see them in like the 22, 23, 24 range by the end of the year. Chicago is going to try to push the pace. Orlando's going to try to slow down the pace. What do we like here for the Bulls?
Yeah, I think you nailed it. I do think Orlando is just a team that people should expect to be really good defensively. They're right now they're 6th in terms of defensive efficiency. Last year they were top 3. So again, they're just going to continue to be so. They have been playing a little bit faster in pace compared to last season, but like you mentioned, I do think that kind of comes back down to bottom half and maybe even bottom 10. And again, this is a team where they're pretty healthy. It does Lonzo Ball is going to be out for a while, but they're pretty much healthy. They're top 4 or 5 guys. So I do think there's just going to be better spots in other parts of the slate. I guess the one guy that sort of stands out, his price has gone up quite a bit now, so he's not really the value spy. I guess he's actually been pretty expensive all year so far, but Josh Giddey I think has been really solid, just filling up the stat sheet top to bottom. 23% usage rate, 33% assist rate, and a 14% rebound rate, 1.25 DraftKings points per minute. So I actually think Giddey would be my favorite Chicago Bull player, but I don't think it's going to be a guy that I'm targeting a ton of. I just think he's going to be a contrarian option that I'll have some.
All right, I had to. Yeah, sorry. I have the same injury as Christian McCaffrey, so I have Achilles tendonitis in my right Achilles, and my brace is making me itch so bad right now. I had to take it off for a few minutes. So I have the one that like goes up above like your calf, like all the way to your knee, and like it's gosh, don't ever hurt your ankle or Achilles or anything. It's awful. It sucks so bad. Anyway,
are you saying hold on to Jordan Mason then? Keep him stashed.
Yeah, I mean, I'll say this: like, I've been in the boot for a week, and like the pain has been so much better. So, yeah, I was talking to my foot doctor, and he's a huge football fan. We always talk football, and he's like, Christian McCaffrey probably just went way too hard this offseason. Does that shock anybody? Like, does that shock anybody? Anyway, yeah, I mean, I definitely don't mind the Josh Giddey call. I think Chicago is a really good fit for him. I think he's going to have good games from time to time. I think this is just a tough matchup overall. I think if anything, like you could potentially take some shots on Vooch. I feel like Vooch is a guy that potentially benefits from a game slowing down than a faster paced game than anything else. So, like Zach LaVine, I think benefits Kobe White. They benefit from the games being faster. But I think like a guy like Vooch probably benefits from the game being slower. So, and hey, it's revenge. I would love to have Vooch in Orlando still. I think Vooch, gosh, yeah. Anyway, all right. Brooklyn at Memphis, no total in this game. It's a back-to-back for Brooklyn. I did see someone in chat said that Claxton got ruled out already for this game. He will sit out on Wednesday for hamstring injury management. So we have that news. We'll see if anything else comes out. They're the only team on the back-to-back on this DK slate. On the Memphis side, Gigi Jackson's out, Kennard's out, Ja's questionable, Spencer's out, Williams is out, Contra's questionable. So, I mean, I think the biggest thing here is Ja being questionable because it matters a lot. If he plays, I don't necessarily like Ja. They've been very careful with his minutes to start the season, and I don't really expect that to change anytime soon. But I wouldn't be shocked if he sits. If he's out, Pittman has been incredible. And I mean, he got a price increase to 5,900, but I mean, his assist opportunities have been fantastic. And I know I'm jumping the gun. I'm going to Memphis first. We'll start with Memphis. We'll go backwards in this game because I went backwards. But Edey is questionable, but on the injury report, I thought it said probable. I'll look that up really quick. Yeah, Edey on the actual injury report from NBA is questionable. So I just forgot to write that one down. That's me. So we'll pay attention to all this. But I mean, Pittman's assist opportunities have been incredible. I hate what Memphis is doing as like their rotation, just in general. But I think if Ja sits, I would take some shots on Pittman, even at 5,900 here.
Yeah, I agree. I think I do think Pippen does have a pretty solid role on this team, even if Morant plays. And like you mentioned, they're pretty reluctant to even guys who are healthy, like Desmond Bane. I know he played 31 minutes last game, and that was a season high. Like they're being just very careful. I guess I don't even know if they're being careful. It's just like a weird rotation thing that they're doing. So even if Morant were to play, I think Pippen does have a role on this team. But I just don't know if he would have a role strong enough at 5,900. So you probably need Morant out for him to be a strong play. But if Ja is out, he is a very strong play, double in back-to-back games, and he's a guy who can also flirt with mid-teens or I guess mid-level rebounding rates as well. So he had 4 rebounds last game, 5 in the game before that. So he's a guy who can just fill it up across the stat sheet. So him I do like quite a bit. Jaren Jackson, I was pretty encouraged to see his minutes go up. They only went up 1, but I think 24 minutes. Now they're playing Brooklyn in a game where they're not on a back-to-back. So I do think we could see him maybe play 25, 26 minutes. And he's just a really good permanent producer as well. But again, 7,600, I think it's probably just difficult to get overly excited about him unless Ja is out. So for me, like this whole team pretty much just rests on if Ja plays. If Edey and Ja are out, we probably see Santi Aldama start again. And he's been the one guy that they've sort of let run out there for a ton of minutes. So if Aldama starts again, I like him quite a bit here at 5,400. He's also, he's always been a good permanent producer as well. So I do think he's probably going to be one of my favorite plays on this team if one of or both of Edie and Morant are out for this game.
I think they would roll out Jay Huff if Edie sits Jay Huff for like 25, 30 minutes, or do we think that that's just not something we should bet on?
I think that they would probably find it pretty easily to just use Jaren Jackson and maybe even Aldama as like a five, and then they also have Brandon Clark as well. So I don't think we ever see Huff play like high 20s or even 30 minutes, but I do think 20 plus minutes is in the realm of possibilities if Edie's out. And again, like Edie being out, like he's yet to play 15 minutes in any but one game so far this season, so he's not really
Right.
a big minutes guy as is. So you kind of get a good feel for the rotation. Then with Claxton out, the Nets are kind of just absolutely brutalized injury wise at their front court as well. So they can easily just have both these teams match up small in this game. I would not be surprised at all to see Jaren Jackson and Aldama and Brandon Clark kind of handle a lot of the center minutes. So Huff will still play because he's been in the rotation pretty firmly and he's been playing pretty solid. But I don't think he's ever going to be a guy playing 28 plus minutes here.
And just in general, this game could go small, right? Like just in general, Claxton already being ruled out for this game. Maybe they get Clowney 20, 25 minutes in this game. He only played 16 on Tuesday night. So like if he plays 20, like it just could be a game where like it just goes small. Where like we see Williams and like Finney Smith at the five. Against like Adama, like you mentioned, or Triple J, type of guys. So could be just a game that goes small. So maybe Edie being out and Huff getting ownership is good for us. And it's a situation we stay away from with all the value that we have already. Brooklyn side, I mean, I hope everyone listened to me about Dennis Schroeder yesterday. That was one of the things that I got right. I definitely didn't get Rudy Gobert right. Happens to the best of us. But yeah, I mean, I love Schroeder on the podcast yesterday. I'll go right back to the well on him. I love what we're seeing out of him right now. Like 14 assists, and he's had at least 6 assists in every game so far this year. Yeah, I mean, Memphis, not the best matchup in the world, but gosh, man, Dennis Schroeder he's crushing. I mean, his production is just phenomenal right now.
Yeah, 100%. And the price tag, really hasn't gone up enough, especially this isn't really like the most surprising thing ever. I don't think he's like playing over his head by any means. When you look at his splits last year with no Ben Simmons and no McCall Bridges, his numbers were really solid. He had a strong usage rate, and I believe his assist rate was up over 30%. So like the numbers really aren't that surprising here. If anyone's been sort of surprising from a usage standpoint, it's been Cam Johnson. I guess really mainly just this most recent game, but 10 plus shots in every game so far this season. So I think you can make a case for him as well. Would prefer Schroeder there for the price, but the big news. I guess I do want to see how the rotation shook out for the Nets in his most recent game, just because obviously Clowney started, only played 16 minutes. Claxton only played 26 minutes, so they were playing somebody I would assume Dorian Finney-Smith at the 5. He played 32 regulation minutes there. So Dorian Finney-Smith, probably not the most exciting play, but if he's going to be getting time as a center, you would assume that his rebounding rate would be higher in that sort of role. He did score 17 points in this last game, but 11 of those did come on free throws. However, again, you can maybe assume that was a benefit of him playing more center. So he's someone that you could make a case for, but I do think Clowney would just naturally play more minutes. At least, I would say at least 24 would probably be where we'd end up projection-wise minimum, maybe even 26 there. So I do think him and DFS could be pretty interesting value plays here.
All right, let's play the morning grind game, and then we'll get out of here. Nice little 8-game slate over there on DraftKings. Really like this slate. I think it's a fun slate for sure. Favorite play under 5K to go 7X. We have plenty of options today. Who do you got?
Yeah, I'm going to stick with that game that we just mentioned. I'm going to go Noah Clowney. I know there's definitely some risk with this one here, but again, I do think as long as he starts, which he started in this most recent game, so I would assume he's going to start for sure here. But if he can play 20 plus minutes, I do think the price tag is definitely cheap enough for him to go 5 or 7X here under 5K. I think it's 3,900. So yeah, I'm going to go with Noah Clowney.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to go to that Atlanta-Washington game. I'm going to go Ricochet at 4,400. I think that we might see him get like his first 30-minute look on the season here. I could be wrong, but I think that this is a really good spot for him. So that's who I got Over 8K to go under 5X. Who's your bust today?
Yeah, I'm going to go with Karl Anthony Towns here. He's 8,200 on DraftKings. He's had the one strong DFS game, 48 points against the Pacers, but this is just a really gross game and a tough matchup here against Miami. So I'll go with Cat.
Yeah, I'm going to go to Jalen Brunson in that same game. Like, we hate this game, right? Like, it's just, hate's a strong word, but I highly dislike this game. Jalen Brunson has plenty of upside, but I mean, he's yet to hit 5X yet this season. So I think they're still trying to figure out what to do with the offense in New York, and eventually they might figure it out. But yeah, I mean, I think this matchup against Miami is not one that I want to bet on Brunson. Favorite 6X play today? Who do you got going 6X today?
Yeah, I'm going to go with RJ Barrett here, 6,600. Obviously, you have the likes of Scotty Barnes, Emmanuel Quickly, Kelly Olynyk. Those are probably three of the higher usage guys for the Toronto Raptors if they're all healthy, all out here. So I think RJ Barrett will definitely benefit here. You might have some worries about the minutes there, but again, I do think that he plays a few more minutes here in the spot. And 6,600, I do think is just too cheap of a price tag, and I do think we see him play more minutes. And obviously, great matchup here against Charlotte. So I'll go with Barrett.
It was a shoulder too. He got some foul trouble in that Denver game. We really don't know what to expect minutes wise. I wouldn't be shocked if he plays 38 minutes in this game. So I'm going to the same game. I'm going to my boy Jakob Poeltl, centers against Charlotte. I mean, I can't preach this enough. If you're listening to the podcast for years, you know how much I talk about this like matchup, and it's great. I mean, this is the spot I want to target. So Jakob Poeltl, my favorite 6X play today. Favorite GPP ceiling play. Ownership doesn't matter. Price does not matter. Who do you think has the highest ceiling on this slate?
You know what? I'm gonna stand on. I'm gonna go with Cade Cunningham. I think he's gonna have the biggest game of the year for him so far this season. I mentioned all of his awesome rates earlier: 35% usage rate, 38% assist rate. Like the numbers are just fantastic for Cade Cunningham. He's had 4 really difficult matchups so far. I guess 3.5 if you want to count the Pacers as a somewhat fine matchup, but Miami, Boston, Cleveland, like that's a pretty difficult draw, and he's still had some pretty solid games there. I think he goes for 60 plus here, and I do think he could potentially even flirt with a triple double if you can have a ceiling rebound game.
Listen, I hear you, man. Like again, it's not that I think he's a bad basketball player by any means. Yeah, I mean it's just tough. I kind of went back and forth on this question. I absolutely love what LaMelo is doing this year. I mean, he has the second highest usage rate in the NBA through the first few games this season behind Giannis. Cade's up there too, for what it's worth. Like, I think Cade's like 4th or 5th. So, like, what your take isn't wrong. I ended up going Maxey. Tyrese Maxey is who I had in this question today. I absolutely love Maxey. This dude, like 30 shot attempts is not something you see a lot. And with Paul George and Embiid out, like he's going to keep shooting. And I think the matchup is great against Detroit. So really like Tyrese Maxey. We talked about like AD and like how they're running the offense through AD. And I absolutely love that. I love what we're seeing out of LaMelo with his, health being great and his usage rate, 34.4%. Like I said, it's tied with Giannis for the best usage rate in the NBA. So I wrote down Maxey. I'm going to stick with that take. I really like Maxey today. It's just really hard to find guys shooting 30 times, and he's done it 2 out of 3 games. Maybe it's the odd games that he does it, and I'll miss it here on an even game. But I love what we're seeing out of him. And yeah, I mean, I just don't expect it to change until Embiid and Paul George get back. Let's get weird GPP play. Who do you got today?
Yeah, again, I don't know if this is going to be totally necessary, just because I think there's going to be a lot of value in the slate, and especially if we get a guy like DeAndre Hunter ruled out, it'll only open up more. Then obviously NBA, we can get more news as the slate goes on. But currently, I'm going to go with Anthony Black. Like I mentioned, the minutes have been pretty solid for him. I think they are very clearly kind of set on him getting regular minutes in the rotation. So I think he's definitely in play for 25 plus minutes, pretty much any game here. And then the game can also go weird. Maybe someone gets in foul trouble. Maybe we see a blowout. I'm not necessarily banking on that, but this is still definitely a spot where we could maybe see a spike game for Black, who's already been, pretty productive. And again, just a guy who can fill up the stat sheet pretty much in every single category. So I'm going to go with Black.
I like it. My Magic, man, they look good. I got Caleb Martin. I said that I wrote him down earlier when we were talking about this matchup. I love what the 76ers are doing. They're just playing their guys. They're like, hey, we don't have Paul George. We don't have Joel Embiid. You go out there and you play 35-plus minutes. And Caleb Martin has played 37 minutes in 2 or 3 games. And, yeah, I mean, he's 5,100. So we have all that value in those first 2 games. We talked about all the value in those first 2 games. The value in the first 2 games is stellar. Not going to talk bad about the value. But to get different, you have to be different somewhere. And I love to be different on value plays. I talk about this all the time in Expert Survey. I'm on salary lineup HQ tags from time to time. I like to be different with salary savers because, I mean, I think those are the easier boom bust plays. I mean, we know that Maxey and Cade and these guys are going to get their usage, but you have no idea what these guys are going to roll into these situations. So we could sit here and speculate all we want about what Toronto is going to do. But at the end of the day, we don't know what Toronto's going to do. We haven't seen this team without Barnes and quickly playing yet this year. We assume it's going to be Barrett. We like the matchup for Jakob Poeltl. We think that some of these other guys are going to benefit, but you really don't know, So I like what Caleb Martin's got going on with Philadelphia right now. He's my Let's Get Weird GPP play, and I hope he goes a little overlooked today just because of all the value that we have. Let's go to the betting portion of the show. Do you have a over-under money line against the spread? Any type of bet that you like here?
I do, yeah. And I don't want to sound like too much of a homer. I swear, these picks, on Cade Cunningham and here on the Pistons, they are based on the math and the stats that I like to look at. So I'm taking the Pistons money line here, plus 150. If you want to be a little bit more comfortable, a little safer, they are plus 4.5, minus 115 over on DraftKings. But again, the Pistons have played some really tough teams, and they've played them well. Now, I don't think the Pistons are, some great team this year all of a sudden, but I do think they're better than they were last year. I do think the Sixers are in a spot where they are not at full strength, obviously with Embiid and Paul George out, and they had a lot of guys playing over their head, right? Other than Tyrese Maxey, you guys like Caleb Martin, who's been playing, really, really well, and Kelly Oubre has been playing pretty solid. But this Pistons team, they've played Miami, Boston, Cleveland, and the Pacers, all really close. And I think they were beating all 4 of these teams at one point and ended up losing all 4 games in true Pistons fashion. But I think they finally break through and get a win here against the Sixers on the road.
Yeah, I'm not going to go to a money line bet, but I'm going to go to Lakers plus 5. I really like what I've seen from the Lakers. I think this is a different team with JJ Redick. I'm a huge JJ Redick fan. I made it very clear before on the podcast, but I love what he's doing with the Lakers. I mean, they just look like a different team. They're still not playing the best defense in the world, but I feel like anytime you get LeBron going into Cleveland, he's going to get up for this type of game. AD looks absolutely incredible to start the season. Reeves looks awesome. So I don't know if Russell being potentially out really changes much here. If you do wait for the Russell news, I think you could potentially get plus 5.5, 6.5 type range if Russell gets ruled out. But I'm going to jump on this one now because I think that, the smart money is going to be on the Lakers side here after what we've seen so far through the first 4 games. Any player props or pick 'em plays that you like on this slate?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I guess, if anyone is looking for player props, I usually run projections and then I, put in a lot of bets early morning. So feel free to check back in on those on Scores and Odds or on the pick'em package at RotoGrinders. But the one that's standing out to me right now, before running any projections, is Josh Giddey over 24.5 points, rebounds, and assists. He's been filling up the stat sheet pretty much from top to bottom so far this season. And like I mentioned earlier, the Magic are obviously a very good defensive team, and they are playing a little bit faster than I think will be normal come the end of the year. But still, I do think Josh Giddey is just a good fit for this team. He's playing big minutes. Last game, he had 21 rebounds and assists alone. So obviously, just his ability to fill up the stat sheet top to bottom goes a long way. And I believe he's cleared this number in the last 3 games pretty easily. So I'll take Josh Giddey there.
All right, I like it. Anyone want to guess? I'm sure chat can guess. I'm going to go to Jakob Poeltl. I'm going to take the over on 10.5. I know it's high, but I'm going to take the over at 10.5 here. I actually bet over 12 for what it's worth. I took the ladder up to 12. That's all the Hard Rock offered. So I took, over 10.5. I took over 11. I took over 12. I mean, this guy's had at least 9 rebounds in all 4 games this year. Now Barnes is out and he gets Charlotte. I mean, I can't preach enough how bad Charlotte is at rebounding the basketball. I mean, it's been a thing for years and years and years, and it just continues to crush. So I'm going Jacopoto over 10.5. I was hoping it came out at 9.5, and I could ladder it up to 12 because that's all that Hard Rock offers. But I'm good with it. I'm good with taking the over on 10.5. I like this matchup a lot, and I think the game stays relatively close. I think Toronto keeps the game close. I think Charlotte with LaMelo playing keeps the game close. I mean, it's Charlotte -6 right now, and I think that's close enough where Podol gets 30 plus minutes. 30 plus minutes, I think, is all he needs in this matchup. So. Kyle, any final thoughts before we get out of here?
No, I appreciate you having me on. Always fun talking hoops. So hopefully we can get some winners here for tomorrow.
All right, that's going to wrap it up for Wednesday's podcast. I know it's Tuesday night. Wrap it up for Wednesday's pod. We're back tomorrow talking football, NFL time. Me and Noto talking some NFL here on Thursday. Then we're back NBA on Friday. Appreciate all the kind words over there in chat and on Discord. And hope everyone has a good NBA slate. We'll see you again tomorrow.